All right, so first set of examples before we go back to the thing called the unit circle, we're going to go over practicing sketching in standard form. So remember, you always need a vertex and your initial side, which is always the positive x-axis. So no matter what, that will be consistent for all of these. All right, so if we talk about 165, first of all, it's positive, which means we're going in the counterclockwise direction. What I do highly suggest is to label each of the axes itself. It allows you to see where the number actually has to fall. So if we are going 165, that is between 180 and 90, which puts us in quadrant number 2. Okay, so you have your vertex, your initial side, and your terminal side drawn. The most important thing is the arrow. So given that it's positive, we need to be in the counterclockwise direction. And then what you would do is you typically would then write 165 degrees right by the terminal side. For B, we're going opposite. So it's negative. So 0, this is negative 90. This is negative 180, negative 270. But negative 105 is between negative 90 and negative 180. So that puts us down here. Okay, so this is negative 105 degrees. And it's negative, which means you need to make sure that you are drawing in the clockwise direction. All right, 270, it's positive. So we're going counterclockwise. So we label all our axes. And then 210 falls between 180 and 270. So that's going to put me somewhere in quadrant number 3. And then it's positive, which means I need to draw my arrow in the counterclockwise direction. Now, what you find with D is the number is big, and it's also negative. So we have 0, we have negative 90, we have negative 180, we have negative 270, we have negative 360, but the problem is negative 600 is bigger than that. So we have to keep going. So basically what you're going to do is you just keep adding 90s. So negative 90 is the same as negative 450. Negative 450 is, negative 180 is the same as negative 540 when you add it again. And negative 270 is the same as negative 630. So negative 600 falls between negative 540 and 30. So we're going to be in quadrant number 2 for negative 600. But when you draw this, first of all, it's negative, which means it needs to go clockwise. But you have to keep in mind, we already did one full circle around to get negative 360. And then you have to continue that rotation to when you get the negative 600. So just make sure you're not just drawing one single curve from the initial to the terminal side, because that's not going to give you negative 600. You want to make sure that it's actually representational of where the angle would fall and how many times you had to go around the actual circle itself. All right, next part we're going to talk about here. Angles that have the same initial and terminal side, these are referenced as coterminal angles. So coterminal angles. So for example, basically what you want to think of is if you have your circle, and let's just say here's our angle. So if I have my initial, my terminal, all that stuff, I could have gotten that by doing that. I could have, if I use a different color here, gotten that by doing a full rotation and then that. I could have also gotten it by not just doing one rotation. I could have done 2 rotations and getting that. But all 3 of those angles are equal to each other. So 30 degrees, 390 degrees. Also, you can go opposite. So let me throw another one in there. Let me use black. I could have gone this way as well. And that could get me, say, if I throw another one in there, negative 330. Okay. All 3 of those all are the same. All are the same. They all end at the same terminal side. So you also notice, though, the difference between them is 360 degrees. So the difference between 30 and 390 is 360. The difference between a positive 30 and negative 330 is also 360, which is a full circle. So the difference is always, the difference between them is always basically adding or you're subtracting 360 degrees for a full rotation. So what you're going to do is you're going to be asked, we're going to focus still on degree mode for right now. We're going to find the angle with a positive and negative coterminal angle. So you do not need to draw these, okay? So we're going to get positive and we're going to get negative. So think, if we're starting at 32 degrees and we want to get a positive, well, let's add 360 to it because that's one full rotation. So that gets us 392. So that is a positive coterminal angle to 32 degrees. For negative, let's do the opposite. 32 minus 360. And that gets us negative 328 degrees. So we have both a positive and a negative coterminal angle to go with 32 degrees. For 187, same idea. 187, let's add 360 to it. And that gets us 547. And for negative, we do 187 minus 360, which gets us negative 173. Okay, now, as the numbers get bigger, you try to keep with this pattern. So negative 240, same idea, negative 240. We're going to add 360 to get a positive angle, and that gets us 120. And then for the negative, we're going to take negative 240 and we're going to subtract negative 360. And that gets us negative 600. For 45, we do negative 45 plus 360. And that gets us 315. For the negative, we have negative 45 minus 360, and that gets us negative 405. Now make sure you're continuing. It's degree mode. Everything's degree, so make sure you have a degree symbol. Don't just write a number. You need to make sure that symbol is there. So in pre-calc and in calculus, there's two modes. You either have degree mode, which we've seen on the calculator, or you're going to have something called radian mode. And that is basically, it's going to convert, we're going to basically convert degrees and radians back and forth and go over who is equal to who.